Buenos Aires, 1960. A city of wide boulevards and cafe smoke and tango rising from courtyard windows after dark. A city where a man could disappear, or, if he was clever enough, become someone else entirely. In a plain house on the northern outskirts of the city, a middle-aged man named Ricardo Clement woke every morning, ate his breakfast, kissed his wife, and took the bus to work at a Mercedes-Benz factory. He was unremarkable. He wanted it that way. His real name was Adolf Eichmann, the man who organized the deportation of 6 million Jews to their deaths. He had been hiding in plain sight for 15 years, and nobody had found him until now. To understand why Israel's Mossad would mount the most audacious kidnapping in modern history, you have to understand what Adolf Eichmann actually did. Not as an abstraction, as a man with a desk, a telephone, and a train schedule who turned mass murder into a logistics problem. In January 1942, senior Nazi officials gathered at a lakeside villa outside Berlin for the Wannsee Conference. Their agenda: the systematic extermination of every Jew in Europe. Eichmann didn't conceive the plan. He made it work. As head of the Gestapo's Section 4B4, he coordinated deportations across Nazi-occupied Europe with cold bureaucratic efficiency. France, Hungary, the Netherlands, Greece, Poland, country by country, train by train. He tracked the numbers, he managed the schedules, he negotiated with railway officials for extra cattle cars. 6 million people moved like cargo. When the war ended in 1945, the Nuremberg tribunals tried and executed much of the Nazi leadership. Eichmann slipped through. He moved between displaced persons camps, changed his name repeatedly, and in 1950 obtained a Red Cross humanitarian passport under the name Ricardo Clement. He sailed to Argentina. He was not alone. Under President Juan Perón, Argentina had quietly become a sanctuary for hundreds of former Nazis. Some historians estimate 5,000 war criminals found refuge there. For men like Eichmann, it was a second life. He sent for his wife and sons. He found steady work. He became a neighbor, a commuter, an ordinary man on an ordinary street. And the dead stayed dead. Until the dead's children came looking. In 1957, a German Jewish prosecutor named Fritz Bauer received a letter that would change history. Bauer had survived the Nazi years and returned to West Germany consumed by one mission: accountability. He had spent years fighting to bring war criminals to justice in a legal system that had little appetite for the task. The letter came from Buenos Aires. A man there had discovered his daughter was dating a young German who had openly boasted about his father's wartime role. That young man's name was Klaus Eichmann. Bauer didn't trust the West German government with what he knew. Too many former Nazis still moved through its corridors, so he went around it entirely. He contacted the Israelis.
The intelligence landed on the desk of Isser Harel, director of the Mossad. Harel looked like a retired school teacher. He thought like a chess grandmaster. He had built the Mossad from nothing and had been hunting Nazi war criminals since Israel's first day as a nation. Reading the Eichmann report, he felt something rare in his profession: certainty. But certainty created its own problem. Argentina was a sovereign nation. Israel had no legal jurisdiction. Extradition was politically impossible. No Argentine government would admit to sheltering a Nazi war criminal. And a formal legal request would send Eichmann underground again. There was only one path forward: go to Buenos Aires and take him. Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion gave his approval. The operation was given a name: Finale. In early 1960, a Mossad advance team flew into Buenos Aires on forged passports. Businessmen, tourists, nobody worth a second glance. They rented safe houses, established communication protocols, and began watching a modest house on a street called Garibaldi in the suburb of San Fernando. For days, they observed, they photographed, they noted every routine, every movement, every face. The man they were watching had the right build,
the right age, but in this work, close was not good enough. They needed proof.
It came on March 21st, 1960. An agent watched from a distance as Ricardo Clement stepped off his bus carrying a small bunch of flowers. He walked to his door. He handed them to his wife. It was their wedding anniversary. The agents cross-referenced the date. It matched the Eichmann's anniversary exactly. The man on Garibaldi Street was Adolf Eichmann. The team sent a single encrypted message back to Tel Aviv. Isser Harel booked a flight to Buenos Aires.
The operation was scheduled for the evening of May 11, 1960. Eichmann's routine was predictable. Every night, the same bus, the same dark road home, the same short walk from the stop to his front date. That walk was their window. 2 cars were positioned. Agents took their places in the shadows on either side of the road. They waited.
At precisely 7:40 in the evening, the bus arrived. Eichmann stepped off. He walked toward the parked car on the road's edge, just as he had done 100 times before. An agent stepped forward from beside the engine, as though checking a mechanical problem. "Un momento, signor." Eichmann stopped. And in that pause, in that fraction of a second, when the man responsible for the murder of 6 million people stood in an Argentine suburb, completely unsuspecting, they took him. He was pulled into the back seat. 2 agents pinned him. He struggled briefly, then went still. He was driven to a safe house outside the city.
Inside the safe house, under a bare bulb, a Mossad agent looked the man in the eye and asked his name. The man who had lived as Ricardo Clement for 10 years looked back calmly and gave a number. "My SS number is 45326. My Nazi party number is 889895. He confirmed it himself. No coercion, no theatrics, just a man reciting his credentials, as though he were checking in for a shift. Adolf Eichmann had been captured. Now the agents faced a question they had been dreading since the operation began. How do you get him out?
By extraordinary timing, Israel's national airline El Al had a Boeing 707 scheduled to fly into Buenos Aires on May 19th, carrying an official Israeli diplomatic delegation to Argentina's 150th independence anniversary celebrations. That plane would land. It would refuel. It would need to fly home. The Mossad saw their exit. Eichmann would be sedated, dressed in an El Al flight attendant's uniform, escorted by 2 agents posing as medical crew. The cover story? A staff member injured in an accident, being repatriated to Tel Aviv for treatment. He would walk onto that aircraft in broad view of Argentine authorities and simply fly away.
Eichmann was held in the safe house for 9 days while the plan came together. 9 days in which every knock on a door, every passing siren, every unfamiliar car on the street felt like discovery. But the days passed, and Eichmann, to the quiet unease of his captors, did not rage, did not plead, did not break. He talked, politely, bureaucratically, in the same measured, administrative tone he had once used to fill deportation trains. He described his wartime role as a matter of following orders. He bore, he said, no personal malice. The agents who questioned him during those 9 days said it was among the most disturbing experiences of their careers. Not because he seemed like a monster, because he didn't. May 20th, 1960. El Palomar Airport, night. The El Al aircraft sat on the tarmac, engines warming. The diplomatic delegation filed aboard, officials, staff, crew. And then, supported between 2 men in El Al uniforms, a pale, glassy-eyed figure who moved with the uncertain shuffle of someone heavily medicated. An Argentine customs official stepped forward. He studied the man. He studied the papers. The escort explained, a crew member, a head injury, being taken home for treatment. The official looked once more, then stamped the documents, waved them through. Adolf Eichmann was walked up the steps and strapped into a seat aboard an Israeli aircraft. The doors sealed. The engines roared. As the aircraft lifted off the runway and climbed into the Buenos Aires night, Isser Harel, seated among the passengers, closed his eyes.
One of the agents on that flight later described the moment the wheels left the ground. He said he didn't feel triumph. He didn't feel joy. He thought of the 6 million. He thought of the children. He thought of what the quiet, sedated man strapped into a seat at the back of the plane had done. What he felt, he said, was a kind of terrible completeness, a debt only partially repaid.
3 days after the flight, Prime Minister Ben-Gurion stood before the Israeli parliament. Eichmann is in Israel. The world erupted. Argentina demanded his return. The UN convened. Accusations of illegal abduction flew across diplomatic wires. Israel acknowledged everything and proceeded anyway. The trial opened in Jerusalem in April 1961. Eichmann sat in a bulletproof glass booth as survivors took the stand and told their stories to a watching world for the first time. Political philosopher Hannah Arendt, covering the trial, gave the world a phrase it has never forgotten: the banality of evil. Not a monster, just a man who processed murder like paperwork. On December 11, 1961, guilty on all counts. On May 31, 1962, hanged. His ashes scattered into the Mediterranean Sea, outside Israeli waters, so that no piece of Israeli soil would ever hold what remained of him.
There are those who argue about what the Mossad did, that kidnapping a man from a sovereign nation, however guilty, sets a precedent no democracy should be comfortable with. Those arguments exist. They matter. And then there are the survivors, the people who wore the numbers, who buried the names, who lived inside the machinery that Ricardo Clement once managed from behind a desk. For them, the debate carries a particular weight, because they know what happens when institutions fail and no one comes. Isser Harel said it plainly. We did not want vengeance. We wanted the world to see, to know, to remember. It did. It should. Adolf Eichmann remains the only civilian ever executed by the State of Israel. The 6 million are still dead. Remember them.